your fire! No!
Get out, damn it!
We can't just blow away an opportunity like this. Look at these creatures. We don't know that much about them. We don't know why they're here. It's all right, boys. It's all right.
How does he know they're boys?
Shut up. I think I have something that belongs to you. This is yours, right? This is yours. Good. That's right. I'm Mark Weinstein. Dr. Weinstein. I'm from SETI. S-E-T-I, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. And you do understand me, don't you? You do. You do understand me. You see? They do understand me.
This is the emergency podcast system. This is not a test. Movies are bombing all over the country. They are posing as movies you already know. They may already be in your theaters, your neighbor's home, or even your own. Do not panic. Specialists have been dispatched. They will help you identify these pretenders and defend you against this invasion of the remake. Please stand by for further instructions.
Welcome to the Invasion of the Remake podcast. I'm your host, Jason Bishop. Very congested Jason Bishop. And with me today is Sam Stepanenko.
Today I am just a floating head.
You are a floating head in a jar.
Yes.
That's
that would be
cool.
me. After our very long day yesterday, that's exactly how I feel.
That's right. Yeah, we were both at Calgary Horror Con yesterday, and we're not going to get there today because we're providing new content. But today being 2 weeks from now, or I don't know, today being Tuesday.
Yeah, today being Tuesday. Well, for you, if you're listening on the day we drop this.
Yeah. So I'm recording this so we can get that out, and unfortunately we're missing the content at HorrorCon, but we got lots of cool stuff. As you can tell, I was a little under the weather. But we were able to record quite a few panels yesterday for HorrorCon and look forward to that content dropping in the near future.
Yes,
there was
some fun stuff happening there, yeah.
Yeah.
I popped my cherry on panels, first time ever. After all these years of going to cons, this is my first time actually ever going to a panel.
This year being just kind of under the weather, not being able to, I think, talk for an entire day. Yeah. We kind of opted to record more of the panels, and thankfully we got permission from Dan Doherty, the founder of HorrorCon, and we had a good time for the one day, and hopefully next year I'll be able to commit a little more time to it.
Well, hopefully next year it doesn't happen the weekend before I go on vacation again. It's 2 years in a row. We've had HorrorCon, and then when I was supposed to be leaving for vacation, so we delay vacation for 2 days, and then of course there's all the planning and running around and stuff like that, so it's a pretty stressful weekend, but it was worth it. It was fun.
Yeah, I had a good time. I wish I would have got some one-on-one time with some of the actors, but next year we'll try to make that happen a little bit more. So
yeah, next year, like I said, assuming that things work out a little better logistically, maybe we can make something happen there.
Yeah, and assuming there's a HorrorCon next year. Yes. I'm assuming there will be because it's been going for a while now. So
yeah, it's becoming one of the more popular cons in Western Canada. Because it was packed.
Yeah, Saturday's always a big day for that show. But it was nice to see all the people out for all the horror stuff and seeing a lot of friends and friendly faces. And
making some new ones, yeah. We talked to some really interesting people and maybe line some stuff up for all the horror coming up in October as well.
That's right, yeah. You were doing a little glad handing to get some different content out there for all the horror. It's not going to be fully podcast this year. Yes, it will be. I mean, it'll be the same amount of content for podcasts as we had last year, but it's going to be writers and artists involved now too.
That's and a couple bloggers as well. So we're going to have some film reviews happening. We did last year. Ryan Alteri did some blogs that we promoted last year. So he'll be participating again this year. And we have a couple other bloggers, or at least one other blogger who will be dropping some content. So we have a really wide range of stuff this year for you. So it's a really great get your horror fix resource for this year.
That's cool. It's becoming an online convention.
It is becoming an online convention. It's a lot of work, and I'm hoping to get some people to sort of pick up some of the heavier loads for me, because right now it's just me organizing it.
Oh, dear God, Sam, you're insane.
Yes, right. But yeah, I mean, this year we're way ahead of the game this year, so.
That's how you plan a convention. You gotta, once you've finished the convention, you gotta start planning the next one.
Yes, yeah, and then after we get back, we'll be bugging all these podcasts to start getting their content ready for us.
Yeah, including us.
Including us, yes.
Because I still haven't figured out what I'm booking for that yet.
Yes, and we need to get that out there so we can get our guests.
Exactly. But hey, today, as Sam said in his amazing floating head cosplay, I'm not sure how you got rid of your body, but I mean, it was.
I don't have much of one to begin with.
I know. I was about to say it's a pretty thin one anyway.
Yeah, I just sort of curled it up.
It's like a Venetian blind.
Yeah, those contortions you see in like videos and on circuses. That's me.
It's all curled up. That's what the tentacles of this side of your head are.
Yeah. Yeah, my legs and my arms sort of. I wish you could see that because that was fun.
Did you ever see these as a kid? Like either one of these movies, Invaders from Mars?
I did not. And I'm not sad I didn't.
I'm sure I have seen both of them. I don't really remember them that. I barely remember them at all, to be honest, because I probably was pretty young. And they are meant for kids.
Clearly.
I think. And I do remember that head in the jar from the original being scary as fuck.
And I could see it being scary to a kid, because it is particularly well done for 1953, I think it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was a little person, somebody from Wizard of Oz, one of the Munchkins, that did the head in the jar. In the jar, yes. They did a good job of making him look different enough that it felt like an alien, given the time. Yeah, I think would they call it the Grand Intelligence or Supreme Intelligence or something like that, which is interesting because I think that's what the Kree call their grand leader in the Marvel universe. There we go. Supreme Intelligence, which was also a giant head. Not a little head, a giant head. A giant head, yeah. And I'm sure there's some inspiration from this because this is a fairly well-known 50s science fiction film. Yeah, it was the first to be produced in color. They rushed it out to get ahead of War of the Worlds. You can tell because it doesn't look near as good as War of the Worlds. And is nowhere near as cohesive as War of the Worlds. No, but, in hindsight, looking at this movie, at both these movies, really, and the kind of Wizard of Oz ending where he wakes up and it's all been a dream, this whole movie, spoiler. Which annoyed the fuck out of me. But it kind of, I mean, yeah, it's an eye-rolling thing and as an adult, and maybe a relief as a kid, but it also explains why, so many people, especially in the original, these high-up military people were listening to a 12-year-old. And why some of the dialogue sounded like you don't sound smart at all. Yeah. What is with this nuclear physicist who has this infatuation with his kid? And in Tobe Hooper's version, the teacher who reacts like a 12-year-old at times. That it does make a certain amount of sense. It does make it feel more like a story for kids, for sure. Yeah, I mean, Tobe Hooper's version was not well received, but when you think about what he was trying to do, and I think it flew over most people's heads back then, the low angles that you would see in the movie were all kind of from that child perspective. Usually, I mean, unfortunately, sometimes he breaks away from the kid, whereas the 50s movie never does. That's true. It's just, I'll tell you right straight up, when I was watching the movies, I fucking hated you. I hated you so much for the 3 hours and 10 or 12 minutes that I had to watch these movies. Fuck you. The first one is 78 minutes, and the second one is 100 minutes. So that's almost exactly 110 minutes, or 3 hours and 10 minutes. So.
Yeah, but yeah, there was a. I'm like, I hate you right now, Jay. I hate you right now, Jay. I hate you right now, Jay. But I mean, I'm glad we did watch them, just because now they're watched. And they're,
This job isn't always easy, Sam.
it is not always easy, but I'm still allowed to hate you while I'm watching them. But the concepts were really interesting, especially the reason for the Martians to be coming to Earth. And Invaders from Mars is actually a misnomer. I was thinking about this while I was watching, and then on the way here while I record, and I really wanted to mention it, is they're actually defenders from Mars. This is a preemptive strike.
Yeah, because the humanity is, at least in the 50s, actually I think in both versions, planning to do exploration of Mars by launching a rocket to Mars. And let's face it, if you were a Martian looking at how we treat our own planet, would you want us visiting? No. I mean, it's like you being a shitty tourist and, throwing your garbage out in Hawaii or whatever.
Exactly, yeah.
There's a reason why the native Hawaiians don't like tourists. Be kind to Hawaii. We all like Hawaii.
Yeah, I mean, we're not exactly big fans of tourists here in Calgary. That 10 days a year where we get overrun.
Oh, wait, that's why you're leaving. Isn't that next week?
No, it is not next week.
Okay. Is it early July or late July?
It's early July. I think it's usually
the week after.
It'll be the week after the long
week.
weekend. So we have the long weekend. Then I think it starts like that Friday.
Yeah. What are we talking about? Calgary Stampede is happening, so we get a bunch of rodeo clowns coming in.
Yeah. The self-titled Greatest Show on Earth. It is pretty amazing. If you've never been, it's pretty impressive. If you've been every year, it's meh.
Yeah, if you're a native Calgarian, it's usually get the fuck out of town week. Yeah. If you're not, well, I mean, you'll probably have a good time. There's a big fair, and there's rides and a carnival, and of course the rodeo itself. So.
And concerts.
Concerts, some impressive ones as well. Fireworks every night.
Yeah.
Like it's a big deal. Unless you've been here all the time. But this is kind of, getting climatized to something that's actually special. So
yeah.
That's us. We've been climatized, and we're jaded, and we know it.
Yeah, we acknowledge it. And
we acknowledge we've lost our wonder.
Yes, but
and maybe that is appropriate for this movie. As adults, I think we've lost the wonder.
Yeah, I think that's a really good.
I don't think I hated it as much as you did, but it was arduous at times.
It wasn't a hate. It was arduous is a good word.
Yeah,
and mostly just because the storytelling, especially for the 53, was plotting and cluttered. And it definitely was not as cohesive as I would have liked.
No, I mean, at least with 53, it builds tension as it goes, where I think Hooper's version goes more for laughs.
To a certain extent, yes. And there were changes he made that I didn't like. Mm-hmm. I mean, it still looks like a good film. It's still.
I love the practical effects from, I think it was Stan Winston Studios. Yeah. And I think he was working on... Oh, I can't remember. He was working on another big movie around the same time. 83, what would that have been?
I don't know.
Could have been a Star Wars movie.
Possibly, because 83 would have been it was when Jedi came out.
Yeah.
Jedi. Yeah. But yeah, it's hard to say, but it does look good, and I think part of it is this was a change of pace for Toby too, right? Mm-hmm. Because he's primarily known for horror, and I think a lot of people were expecting something more horror and less sci-fi and less family-friendly.
And it does feel like that kids hide behind the couch kind of horror. Like, I'd put Gremlins in that category, and Critters, and I can't think of another one.
Yeah. It's okay. Those are good examples.
Yeah, I think I'd put those in that category. And like Doctor Who as well, it went for, the cheap scares and tried to do the creepy aliens and stuff. And I think that's all right. Like, it was meant to be family fare more than anything else. And there is some creepy stuff. Those big aliens were impressive practical effects.
Oh,
and
no question.
Well done. And I can see how that would be creepy to a kid. They're kind of like these big potato head things that probably look a little ridiculous as an adult, but
I still enjoyed that part of it.
It looked great. Yeah. It was a little person on the back of a larger person, and the larger person would walk backwards to give that bended knee look, that the leg bending in the wrong direction kind of look. And then the little person would be controlling the mouth and the small arms that were on the top.
Yeah, no, it was fun. I guess there were parts of it that I really enjoyed. It's just it's just the story really was what kind of bogged me down.
And it's a pretty basic one. Movie starts with a kid having a nice evening watching the stars with his dad. Both movies start out that way.
Yeah.
You know, it's bedtime, and the ship lands in the field. And I love the look at the hill and the field with the fence.
I love that Toby kept that.
I like he did. I do too. It had it has kind of an expressionist kind of feel when you think back to Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, this kind of bent shape. Like, it looks serene and creepy at the same time.
Yeah, they do, and it works really well in both movies. That was one of the parts I liked, is the fact that they kept going back to that look. Mm-hmm. Right? You look at the hill, and something's happening on the hill. The disappearing people in the original was so bad, though.
But, you know, it probably looked good for the 50s.
It probably did, but
the ship lands underneath the sand, and they got to suck these people through the sand, and sometimes the way they made the sand move. I mean, it was just simple vacuums and things like that.
It was
reversing the shot sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah. It's just the way that they all kind of, some of them you could tell were jumping down. The hokey way that some of them threw their arms up. I'm going to throw my arms up and jump.
I mean, that wasn't any more ridiculous than the aliens themselves.
Yes.
Like, they were what you would think of a 50s sci-fi movie. Some dude painted green in a suit. I mean, tall guys. And then they'd make them appear even taller by using little people for those shots as body doubles for the main actors, just to make them look even larger.
Look even larger, yeah. And if you haven't seen it, think Marty McFly in Back to the Future 1 in the hazmat suit.
Yeah. And they'd walk with these stiff arms and legs. I'm like, you're not threatening at all.
And they're slow.
They're so slow.
Yeah.
Like, it would have been a fucking massacre. Like, really, if the military had properly got in there, they would just shot them all down.
Well, and they tried.
They did.
They seemed like they were indestructible until they blow one up.
Yeah.
Right. And that's sort of the only way it seems that they can defeat them is to
and they were the
them.
mutants.
Yes.
Wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable, but I love how they called them the mutants. Yeah. I kept thinking mutates.
Ew.
I know, right? I just had to make them grosser because they looked ridiculous. They were the taint of the mutants.
Yes,
world.
they really were. I mean, I love the set piece when they did get in the ship in the original, because, again, knowing full well that it was in 1953, and...
Do you know how they did the bubbles on the wall?
I have no idea. I just loved it.
You might love it a little less now. The bubbles on the wall were inflated condoms.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
It's so perfect for mutates.
Yes. Condoms, not just for safe sex.
Also for science fiction. Well, before we laugh about this some more, let's move into the first trailer, the 1953 version of Invaders from Mars.
I bet you this is a good one.
This is a good one.
Invaders from Mars. He saw them land from outer space. He saw them capture innocent people only to destroy. Father turned against son. People changed into strange, weird animals. A general of the army becomes a saboteur. Trusted police turned into arsonists. The boy's parents changed into killers.
But nobody's getting anywhere out there. Nobody can locate anything. Anybody. The Martians. We've got to stop
Invaders from Mars. Capturing humans at will for their own sinister purposes, turning them into diabolical instruments of destruction. Invaders from Mars, weird, fantastic beings of a superintelligence, ruling a race of synthetic humans and pitting them against mankind's dream to conquer the universe.
that was a terrific trailer. It was everything I could hope for.
Yeah, it was good. As 50 trailers, either they're really, really good or they're really not good for podcasting.
Yes, I was afraid of that, and then when I found it, I'm like, oh, thank God. The one thing you couldn't see was, and I don't know if it's actually part of the trailer or somebody just threw it in, but every time the narrator would speak, and then they'd be like, why? I should put like Terry Crews from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Why?
There we go.
Okay, Invaders from Mars, 1953, directed by William Cameron Menzies, who directed Thief of Baghdad, H.G. Wells' fantastic Things to Come. I highly recommend that one. I think that one's a silent film. And he was a production designer on Gone with the Wind. The screenplay, this is based on a story by John Tucker Battle, who was uncredited, and it was based on a dream I think his girlfriend or wife had, and then that went on to be the screenplay by Richard Blake, and then adapted by William Cameron Menzies. It's a weird wagon train of weird.
Yes. And it's funny that how it came from a dream. That kind of explains the whole dream theme that materializes at the end of it as well.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Helena Carter played Dr. Pat Blake. She was in a movie called The Golden Hawk. Arthur Franz played Dr. Stuart Kelson, and he was in a movie called Monster on Campus. I'm going to have to watch that one. I thought that was pretty cool. Jimmy Hunt from Sorry Wrong Number played David McClane. He was the kid. He also plays the cop in the remake.
Yes, he does.
Yeah.
Which is a very much smaller part in the remake.
Yeah, and Leif Erikson.
Yes.
Holy shit, he's making discoveries, he's in movies, it's amazing. On the Waterfront, Leif Erikson as well. Like, he's also, must have been really old.
Highlander.
Yeah. Mr. George McClane. He looked pretty good for his age in 1953. I mean, considering he's been around for, 400 or 500 years at that point.
Yeah.
Fucking amazing. Hilary Brock was Mrs. Mary McLean from The Man Who Knew Too Much, another great movie. Morris Ankrum played Colonel Fielding, and he must have liked doing 50s sci-fi movies because he was in another great one called Earth versus the Flying Saucer. You remember that one?
No.
You know this one because that was the one where the UFO hits the Washington Monument and knocks it over.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, everybody should know that one.
At least knows the scene.
That scene is iconic, and that's from that movie. Max Wagner was Sergeant Rinaldi, kind of the right-hand man, who gets sucked in late in the movie into the sandpits. That's kind of what forces the military to go in. It's funny, when I was looking up his screen credits, I would say about 75% of his screen credits are uncredited townsmen.
Which is funny because he was actually not a half bad actor.
No, I thought it was all right. I mean, he's got other ones, but I had to laugh. I'm like, oh my God, uncredited townsman, uncredited townsman, uncredited townsman, uncredited townsman. he was a permanent extra.
Well, you know what? Maybe he was the first permanent extra. We know of a bunch of those ones, right?
Yeah, but I had to laugh, so I didn't want to name one of his movies because he was more famous for being uncredited townsman. William Phipps was Sergeant Baker, and we actually did talk about him because he got busy in this one. They were rushing this movie to get out before War of the Worlds, and apparently he was moonlighting because he was in both movies.
I missed that one.
Yeah, he was in episode. We covered War of the Worlds way back in episode 13. And Milbourne Stone, most famous as playing Doc on Gunsmoke, was Captain Ruth, and Janine Perot was Kathy Wilson, and she was in M, which maybe we'll talk about one day.
Maybe.
I think that one's been remade a couple of times.
I think you may be right. I don't know for sure. It's so hard to keep track of all of them.
Yeah. Uncredited townsman, that one's going to stick with me. I love that. When I saw that, I'm like, yes. I wish everybody's resume was this consistent.
Yes. At least he was working, right?
Yeah.
And he was committed. He says, I'm going to make it in movies even if I have to be uncredited townsman for the rest of my fucking life.
I wonder if his tombstone says uncredited townsman. Oh. Okay, so let's talk about some Invaders from Mars here.
So, and while we were listening to the trailer, there was something that, in the trailer that I wanted to talk about, and you kind of agreed with me that there's a scene there where the father backhands his son.
Yes, when the kid sees the
Scar on the back.
Well, I mean, when the kid sees the UFO,
Yes.
descend over the hill there into the sand, Dad just wants to make sure, so he goes to investigate, and apparently he just went out in his pajamas.
Yeah, well, you get the feeling this hill's not very far from their house.
Yeah, no, it's fairly close.
Yeah.
So he went out to investigate, and he doesn't return until the next morning, and he's very different.
Yes.
He's very different, and apparently, the scar on the back of his neck is the first clue that something happened while he was out, and he's really hostile. Like, I mean, these aliens, whatever they do to the humans to control them, makes them abusive.
They're very rigid and yes, very aggressive and abusive.
Yeah, and that's something Toby, whatever you prefer. We've had this argument before. Thankfully he did away with, because that's one of the more uncomfortable things in the 50s movie is like he's smacking his kid and yelling at his wife, and it's awful.
Yeah, and you know that's. And I actually disagree with you. I think that Tobe toned it down too much almost, because it shows the juxtaposition between this incredibly attentive and kind father to this complete opposite. This
well, I think this
growly, abusive man.
I think the opening scenes in both movies very effective of showing how affectionate and close knit this family actually is, and how attentive they are with each other. And Toby certainly tones it down by making him more wooden, but not so abusive, but less attentive, and those feelings of affection are really forced and stiff. I kind of appreciated that. Like, it didn't work for everybody, but I thought it worked for him.
Yeah, and I mean, both methods worked, but as uncomfortable as that is, especially in this day and age, it really showed the juxtaposition, and it showed how the kid ultimately sort of was, okay, this is not my dad anymore. Mm-hmm. It's really sort of that moment where you know that the kid knows that something has changed. It's not his father anymore. It's his father's body, but it's not his father.
Yeah, and at this point, Mom's still okay, but once the kid goes to school, Dad takes her over the hill, and then she comes back, and she's all fucked up, too.
Yes.
And the next thing you know, I'm like, oh, they're going to kill this kid. Oh. That shocked me.
Oh, when they killed the little girl?
Yes, because his friend, David's friend, she had gone over the hill, and he'd seen it through his telescope, and she was also changed. And I don't know, was she a neighbor or somewhere close by?
Somewhere close by, yeah.
And she had come back also changed to the point where she burned down her own house.
Yes, and
then later, because I think she served her function,
they blew her head up.
They blew her up. Yeah, the aliens, like whatever they put in their necks blows up.
Yeah, it just shorts out their brain.
And they killed a kid, and they autopsy this kid in the movie. I mean, obviously a lot of this happens off camera and is just in dialogue, but I'm like, holy shit.
That's
I can't
bold.
believe they did this in the 50s. I would be kind of stunned now.
Yeah, it's really bold, and I appreciated it. It didn't serve a purpose, really, except to get that device out of her neck.
Yeah, something they can hold on to and investigate.
I like the fact that Toby kept the look of the device, because if you look at them, they're almost identical from movie to movie.
They're very similar, but he gives them a little more effects. I mean, they're very similar when they're shorting out and that sort of thing, but he's got that screw effect in the back, which is very disconcerting.
Yes. But what I mean is the device itself, when they actually get one out, they look almost exactly the same.
Yeah. I mean, you got that stupid guy who hands it back to the aliens.
Yeah. Yeah, but
that was our opening scene today.
but one of the things that Toby did take out that I really missed was the fact that they did recover one of those devices, and they were using it to free people from the control of the aliens, right? They figured out how it was neurologically connected into their system, so they could remove it safely. Yeah, right. Which is how they ultimately save his parents.
Yeah, I mean, what they've basically done is with these devices is turn these people into remote controlled terrorists and disposable ones.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And again, conceptually, there's lots to like about this movie, right? In both cases, but it's just I think it's because it was aimed at kids. I think it's a lot of what they could have done was not available to them.
I mean, it is the 50s after all, and this was I don't even know if this was a fairly low budgeter for the 50s or not. But I don't know what it made. I think it did all right. Budgeted it $290,000 for 1953 seems pretty big, but it was also bundled in as a double feature, so not exactly a marquee thing. They knew what they were making.
Oh, for sure, they knew they were making
a B movie.
A B movie, yeah, and I mean it clearly is.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, most science fiction from the 50s is typically considered B. There's a few notable exceptions. Day the Earth Stood Still, War of the Worlds. Like those are sort of the sort of classics, but the bulk of them were quickly produced, get it into the theater, make our 50 cents, and move on to the next one. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, 50 cents to go to the movies.
Yeah, I don't think it was that much.
No, probably not. That probably got you a bucket of popcorn as well.
Probably, yeah.
Granted, they weren't making Avengers.
No, fair enough. Yeah, yeah, fair enough. But yeah, like I said, there's still lots to like about these, and like I said, and it's once you think on them and let it sort of settle, you can see what the charm and the appeal were. Mm-hmm.
Generally, it's more well reviewed than the '86. The IMDb score for the original film is a 6.4 out of 10 with a Rotten Tomatoes score of 82% critic score. Audience less forgiving at 55%, which feels a little more realistic considering the movie.
Yeah, and that's critic score seems unusually high. I mean,
that's where I often say sometimes nostalgia tints the glasses somewhat.
Yeah, and I think that's the case here. And I think because this is sort of considered a classic of sci-fi, I think that's part of it too as well. I better like this. It's a classic.
And goddamn you if you don't.
Yeah. Well, and goddamn us.
Yeah. Tobe Hooper's film IMDb score was 5.5 out of 10, and Rotten Tomatoes, these people did not like it. 36% critic score and 33% audience score. And I don't think they're that far apart, personally.
No, I don't think so. I'd say they're almost exactly even in terms of quality. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, there's differences, and
there are some bad performances by some very good actors in Tobe Hooper's movie.
There are, yes, yeah. But again, there's some bad acting in the original as well. I mean, there's a lot of that those stage actors coming into film and that over emoting and stuff that you need for stage that doesn't translate very well to film.
Oh yeah, there's plenty of overacting in the original.
Yeah. Right.
But you almost forgive it because almost everybody's doing it.
Yes, right. So it feels like it's supposed to be that way.
Yeah.
Right? Both of them move into camp in a large way. Toby is deliberate, but a lot of people don't. I think, as you said, didn't get that. Whereas I think in the original, it wasn't deliberate. It was just taking all these classically trained actors who are used to really pushing out the emotion and delivering their lines with a lot of emphasis and. And again,
that could be, I mean, when you got somebody who's done some fairly big movies directing this cheap thing, maybe he was just shooting for the moon and hoping this would be grander than it actually is.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe he was hoping that would sort of add to the drama of it.
Yeah.
I have to say, the police chief, his performance was really understated, and it was excellent. Mm-hmm. I think he was by far the best performance, even though he didn't get much
I really
like
the desk sergeant.
Yes, I liked him as well. Yeah,
he was good.
Yeah, but yeah, the two cops were like just really strong performances, and I wish we'd been able to get more performances like that out of the rest of the cast, because the chief has already been taken over by the time David gets there. Mm-hmm. And yeah, his performance was beautifully understated.
Yeah,
and then the desk sergeant, it was just you felt the kindness coming off of him while watching it, and that's really something interesting to sort of feel in any film, let alone something from the 50s where everybody else around him is taking it to 10 and past, up to 11 as far as overdoing it, and then you have this performance by a guy who just sort of knows what he's doing.
Yeah, and when you think about both these movies and the way the performances are, and then you start thinking about it from that perspective of, oh, this has all been from this boy's mind, which I don't think even when you watch it, like, oh, he just dreamed it all. A lot of people, I don't think, take that into consideration, that this is an unreliable narrator's version
Yes.
of what he thinks is happening would happen in the real. And let's face it, there's no way he'd get into the door of the military that quickly.
No, there isn't. And I think that was partly deliberate on Tobey's part to make it feel more dreamlike, because in the original, it's established that he had been a frequent visitor to the observatory.
Yeah,
and Tobey completely got rid of that character and that whole thing.
And his dad's a scientist that works for the military.
Yeah. But yeah, getting rid of that, I think, helped add to that dreamlike quality of the remake. But at the same time, it also made it harder to look at. It's because, you're right. Because how is this child getting the ear of the military so quickly and easily, right? Because the school nurse she's a school nurse.
Yeah, and it's weird, her role is very inconsistent as well.
Yeah.
Again, you kind of forgive it when you think it's a child's dream, but, at times she's being a little more thoughtful and heroic. It's like, okay, well, I believe you because this teacher's an asshole, and people are acting really strange, and she's starting to witness things and doing a lot to protect this child, but other times she's like screaming like she's also 12.
Yeah, and I mean, you could extrapolate this kid is right around the age of puberty.
Yeah,
right. So there could be like a one of those fantasy things too. Is I've got a crush on his teacher. So it's the school nurse, but
he becomes very heroic during the film, as well as it progresses.
Yeah, so I mean, you can extrapolate that maybe there's a little bit of that coming of age fantasy happening there.
Yeah,
right?
It's a neat idea.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things, unfortunately, we can't ask Tobey, but I think there's more in that film than it is initially given credit. And maybe, I mean, somebody like Scream Factory realizes this because they've given a nice re-release with lots of extra features and that sort of thing. So,
yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things that Tobey did well, because in the remake, all of sort of the key characters, because there's that saying that says that when you dream, you can't dream of a face you've never seen before, right? Like you've seen them all before, right? So by making sure that he knew the nurse before this all happened, kind of helps sort of build that dreamlike quality, right? It's once you get into the military and stuff like that, it's unlikely he would have ever met them, but he could have seen them before, right? Because it is a military town. Right? There is that military base where they are doing these experiments and getting ready to send that rocket off to Mars. Yeah. Right. Which again explains why the Martians are there and at that particular town as well. There's a purpose to it. So yeah, it kind of feeds a little bit better, like I said, when you want to talk about that whole dreaminess of the movie, and the inconsistencies in it make more sense that way. Right. In the original, the first time he ever meets the nurse is when he meets the nurse. Right. Like she's a brand new character to him. In this small town, I can't believe he didn't know the police chief or the sergeant. Right? There's certain things where it's like, okay, this is a small town.
Yeah.
Right. Like this is kind of a town where everybody should know everybody, but they don't seem to.
Yeah.
Right? It's like you don't know anybody but your neighbors. And that's like modern stuff where you don't even know your neighbors half the time.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas in the 50s, I mean,
in this town, your closest neighbor looked like they were a few miles away.
Well, yeah, there's that too, right? But knowing small towns and having lived in them.
Yeah, because you all go into the township to do your shopping and stuff and meet there.
Yeah, and you do things together because that's what you do in small towns. Because there's not much to do except for do like community potlucks and community fairs, all those things you're thinking where you know most, if not everybody, in your town. So, I mean, maybe not all the military people because they would be living on base and maybe not coming into town as much.
And I did get the feeling this was more of a military town.
Yes.
So maybe the military townspeople weren't mixing with the regular townspeople.
And that's could easily be it. But again, it doesn't convey very well in the film.
No.
Right?
No.
But yeah, there's parts of the original that I wish Tobey had kept. Like I said, I think the observatory bit, if you wanted to move it out of that dream or make it less dreamlike, having established that the director of the observatory knew him, considered him a level-headed kid, smart, intelligent, and not prone to flights of fancy, that...
Character witness.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah. And he would also have that contact with the military, which made it more logical for him to say, okay, I have something weird happening here. I need to speak to this general. And he'd have the general that ear because he's working with them.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, there's that... When you have a kid who has friendship with somebody who has authority, who can speak on behalf of this wild fancy. It's like, well, okay, this kid doesn't do this. Maybe we should actually look into this. At least there's something coming from a credible source.
That's right. And at this point, I believe the nurse character had already witnessed at least one incident where there was somebody had the thing on the back of their neck. So he also had that adult verification that what he's saying has some validity.
Yeah, it doesn't happen as easily in Hooper's version.
No, or organically, like sequentially, it didn't feel as smooth. And his movie's longer, but he got rid of some.
Well, that's because there's more scenes of jeopardy within the film of them trying to find something like that bit in the school. I don't even remember what they were trying to find now at the school, or if they were just taking refuge there. And then the two cops that were already taken over had they been taken over yet?
I don't think so.
That were investigating? But then something was coming up from the basement, and it just kind of went away. Like that didn't play very much.
Well, and it gave them like an alternate access point to the tunnels that they'd created. Yeah, it seemed a little contrived to me. There's some things in Tobys that felt like he did them just to help move his story along without explaining why it was happening.
They felt, just here's another little action thriller scene or something to create some suspense or play for humor. Did you know the British version of the original film didn't have the dream sequence ending?
I did not know that.
Yeah,
but that
they changed it, and they actually extended some of the other scenes as well, some of the more expository scenes. And it's funny, like I'd love to get my hands on the British version, because with the reshoots, when they brought Jimmy Hunt back in, like he'd sprouted. Like most of the other guys hadn't changed too much. The actors, adult actors, but he'd gained a couple inches, and
he was clearly older.
Yeah, so there'd be cuts these back and forth, and the professor's tie would be untied, then it'd be tied, and some of the set deck was nicer, so I'd go like sparse to a little more detailed to sparse again, and I'm like, oh, this sounds great.
That actually sounds like a lot of fun. I don't know if I could sit through it again just to see that, though.
I'm sure we can find the sequences on YouTube.
Yeah, I think what Toby was doing is he recognized that the 50s version was a little plotting, right? Because there's a lot of setup before you ever get into the alien ship, right? And there is in Toby's version, but he breaks up the exposition with those brief moments of action just to keep you from disengaging.
Yeah. I mean, that was 50s in general. Like, there's no other way to do this, so we have to explain that this happened because this is much cheaper to do.
Yes.
So there's a lot of dialogue.
Or we don't have the technology to show them what it is, right?
Yeah. Or it's just, not appropriate. Yeah. I mean, this is 50s McCarthyism after all.
Yes. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, Toby had a lot more freedom to include some more exciting elements, right? But yeah, it just felt oddly placed in a lot of time in Toby's.
Let's take a look at Toby's version. Here is Invaders from Mars, 1986 film trailer.
David Gardner just woke up to a nightmare in his own backyard. But no one will listen.
We landed right back there, right behind the hill.
No one will believe.
I told you he needs psychiatric help.
And soon, no one will be left.
Dad? Are you okay, Dad?
Fine.
Because something strange is happening to the people of Willow Creek.
Everything's fine now.
And David Gardner is about to find out why.
David! I'm gonna find my mom and Dad! I'm
David Gardner?
Canon Films presents Toby Hooper's Invaders from Mars. There's no place on Earth to hide.
All right, that was Toby Hooper's 1986 Invaders from Mars. The screenplay was by Dan O'Bannon, who wrote Aliens, and we talked about him in episode 84.
Total Recall.
Yes. The screenplay was also written by Dan Jacoby, who we talked about in episode... Well, I guess we might have mentioned him in episode...
145.
Arachnophobia.
Yes.
Absolutely. And visual effects were by John Dykstra, I'm guessing working with Stan Winston Studios at the time. I wanted to mention him because he's another big effects guru who probably doesn't get enough props for what he did, especially in the 80s.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing about special effects guys is some of them you know really, really well, right? And then there's all these other guys where you just don't know them, but you know their work so well, right? I mean, everybody knows who Rick Baker is. And then, of course, now my name is Tom, the guy, fuck.
Walking Dead guy?
No, not the Walking Dead guy. You know what? I'll remember after the podcast. But
like point derailed real quick.
actually, no, it makes my point though, right? It actually does support my point that you know them, and then you hear the name. Oh yeah, I know that guy, but you don't. But remember,
doesn't always stick with you.
It doesn't always stick with you, and I mean, the
Unless
guy,
you're an effects nerd.
Yeah, and even the person I'm thinking about, like I know his work, like I know that to see it, and I can tell you what he looks like.
Yeah, there was... Honestly, I don't think I actually learned Dykstra's name until there was a Sega CD game I had that he did. It was all like filmed. Something in a tunnel, some sci-fi thing, a sewer tunnel, I don't know, something like that. And it was just this kind of fast-paced sci-fi video game.
Tom Savini.
Oh, there you go, Tom Savini.
I told you I could remember.
There you go. Dykstra did all the effects for that, and I thought that was really cool. And that's when I actually learned that guy's name, and that's I think one of the guys where I was already starting to learn some effects guys' names because you'd see them come up in your favorite films over and over and over again. But John Dykstra hadn't really cemented himself in my brain yet, and then after that, I noticed him on everything.
Yeah,
and he got around a lot. And of course, we've talked about Tobe Hooper a couple of times. Episode 109.
That would be Poltergeist.
And episode 161.
TCM.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And we're definitely going to be talking more Texas Chainsaw Massacre because one of the panels we recorded this week was some actors from the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It was a hilarious panel, by the way, so looking forward to presenting it to you in the near future. Texas Chainsaw never lets us go.
No, it's...
We're stuck on the hook.
Yes, we definitely are.
And, of course, this is another canon film. We've shot the canon again.
Yes, we have. Yeah, I have this feeling that that one's going to be reloaded many, many times.
Yeah, I think so. That actually took me by surprise. I'm like, oh, this is a canon movie?
And then you watch it and go, oh, yeah, this is a canon movie.
Yeah, this is a canon movie. I mean, this is a canon movie that spent some money. This movie was budgeted at $12 billion.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, guess what it made? 4.8. So, well done. I don't know how widely it released it was, but I remember seeing the trailers for it.
Oh, I remember
seeing a lot of
yeah.
trailers for this.
Right, yeah, and you see those opening credits and you see that opening titles like, yeah, I've seen that title billions of times.
Yeah.
Right.
So I was really surprised to see the box office on it. It must have been in the box office for a week.
Yeah, well,
it opened at number 7.
Yeah, it didn't get. I don't think it got a lot of support from critics. And the thing about this movie, and we've already kind of mentioned it, is it's Tobe Hooper. So you're expecting Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You're expecting something a little more horrific, and then you get essentially a kids movie, right? Or something that's toned down, so you're not getting what you expect. You're not getting the blood. You're not getting the gore. You're not getting the terror.
Well, he did Poltergeist around the same time.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not sure what you're expecting. Oh, no, well, I guess this movie probably came out
after.
I think this came out the same year as TCM 2.
Possibly. We'd have to look that up, I guess.
Yeah, I bet you it did.
Yeah.
I bet you 86, that would have been about right, because there was a big gap between the first and the second.
There were, and so you're getting the sort of the sense that when you see Tobe Hooper and you start to connect that name recognition, you're getting something very different from what you normally would expect from him, right? And not in a bad way entirely, but if you're expecting another Texas Chainsaw Massacre or something that's going to terrify you or make you uncomfortable, this does that, but in the wrong way. For an adult. For a kid, I think it would have been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I think if it had been marketed that way, I think it would have done much better.
Yeah. I mean, I'm remembering back, and I'm sure I'd seen both versions of these movies, but I don't think I ever saw it more than once, so maybe that says something.
Yes.
Even kids weren't digging it. Movie stars, Karen Black, who you can see in A House of a Thousand Corpses. She played Linda Magnuson. She was the nurse. Hunter Carson, who was in Paris, Texas, played David Gardner. David Gardner, get over here. David Gardner. I don't know why they kept doing that. Louise Fletcher kept just saying his full name every time. But Hunter Carson is actually Karen Black's real-life son.
I did not know that. I did not read that,
Timothy Bottoms was George Gardner, and he's been in Johnny Got His Gun and The Last Picture Show. I think you're a big fan of The Last Picture Show, right?
That and Johnny Got His Gun.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. And I was actually surprised that we had not talked about Timothy Bottoms before, because he's one of those names like you recognize it, right? But we've never talked about him before.
Yeah, it happens. Now we have. And we'll continue to. Lorraine Newman, she played Ellen Gardner. She's more famous now these days as a voice for animation, and she even displays that in the film when she does the alien voice. But that was the same voice she used on Saturday Night Live as a Conehead.
Yes.
Which is kind of cool. James Karen played General Clement Wilson, and we have talked about him before in episode 148, Piranha.
I missed that one. But I don't deep dive quite as deep as you.
I think he was in the TV one.
Okay. Oh, that's right. He was, because I remember that and I went, connection?
Yeah.
No,
most people remember him from Return of the Living Dead, though. Bud Cort was Mark Weinstein, who was in Harold and Maude and The Life Aquatic.
Another one that I thought we talked about, but we hadn't.
No.
Right.
Louise Fletcher, we definitely have talked about. She played Mrs. McKelch, and we talked about her in episode 54.
Cuckoo, cuckoo, cuckoo.
Yeah. And actually, episode 2, you weren't around, but she was in Best of the Best.
Oh, yes, she was.
Yeah. And she won she was either nominated or actually won, but she was at least nominated for a Razzie for worst performance in a film, which is funny for an Oscar-nominated actress.
Well, I mean, let's face it, she was giving you Nurse Ratched from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Like her
in a film that wasn't meant to be serious.
Yeah, I mean, if you want consistency, at least in the 50s one, there was consistency of performance for characters that have been taken over.
Yes.
We didn't already know what her personality was to begin with, so it didn't look like anybody noticed.
Yes, exactly.
And there was slang she was using in the film that nobody else would use, and you wouldn't think would be something that would come out as much.
If you're possessed,
If you're possessed. I mean, it's a choice. It's clearly a choice, but every time she talked about the nurse, and she would say something, hey, lady, or just these weird little derogatory terms. It's like, I don't know. Maybe you got possessed, and you were like, yeah, stick it in my neck. I'm good. I hate humanity. Let's do this.
Yeah.
I'm on board.
You don't even need to stick it in. I'll help you.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, she was a really jarring, which was disappointing. But I don't think it was a bad performance. I just think that she was jarring, and that's why people considered it a bad performance.
Yeah. Eric Pierpoint played Sergeant Major Rinaldi, best known for Alienation, the television series. He played the lead alien, whose name I can't remember anymore. Wasn't it San Francisco or something like that?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
He was also in Holes and Liar Liar. Christopher Allport was Captain Curtis. He was in the horror movies Jack Frost 1 and 2. I really want to watch those at some point. I've never seen those movies.
Oh.
Donald Houghton was old NASA scientist. He was in Dances with Wolves and The Bodyguard, so I really like that he played old NASA scientist. Kenneth Kimmins was Officer Kenny, and he was in episode 75, Network, when we talked about Network. Which is, you start looking at this cast, there's actually a fairly impressive lineup here. Charlie Dell was Mr. Cross, and he was in the less impressive Bubble Boy and the more impressive Fight Club. And, of course, a military operation cannot be conducted without Dale Dye. Because, hey, the guy who served... It now serves in every military movie ever made.
Yes.
And people would know him from Platoon and even Starship Troopers.
Yeah.
He was always the guy giving orders.
'Cause he's good at it.
He's very good at it. You know, it was a small part, but it was nice to see Dale die in this. And I can't believe we've never talked about Dale die until now.
Again, like, there's a lot of people in this cast. It's like, wow, I can't believe we've never talked about them before.
Yeah.
But yeah, while the trailer was playing, we looked up a factoid because I was thinking about the fact that this is what makes
3 years before Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and I didn't think that was actually going to be a thing.
Yeah, but apparently it was, and I think that's what both these movies were really sort of should have focused on, is the terror of losing yourself, right, and the terror of being invaded by yourself, right? By being invaded by humanity, or by what appears to be humanity.
Yeah,
right.
And it's funny you brought those up, because as a kid, I used to get these movies confused all the time.
Yeah,
and I'm like, wow, that wasn't like that movie, because I used to think like that was a remake of the Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and they were, as far as I was concerned, they were so similar and interchangeable. And
they are, in the sense that they follow very similar themes, even if the motivations are different and so on. And
there's a big theme of the 50s. I mean, this one is more about the Red Scare. Yeah. This is definitely Cold War and the possibility of going to war with the Russians, and that was definitely what was behind this. But the theme of losing oneself and being taken over by something foreign, again, the Red Menace, but that was in Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Day of the Triffids. I mean, there was quite a lot of this body possession type of story happening in science fiction then.
And I mean, it's continued. It's a very common theme through a lot of horror. And science fiction.
I think it means more in the 50s when you're thinking about the Red Scare.
It does, but
it's definitely politically motivated, or at least inspired.
Yeah, certainly.
And horror often takes from things that are happening in the real world at the time.
Typically, yeah, because that's what's. It sort of enhances that experience for viewers, right? But yeah, I think just the whole sense of losing your humanity is always going to be scary.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Or discomforting at least.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I think that's why it continues to be a device.
Yeah, it's scary for the people who are noticing it and seeing this, and their loved ones are being changed and are completely different. And I would imagine it'd be scary for the survivors of it.
It would be, and it would. It's also, I mean, if it's done well, it's also scary for the audience. If the story's told well, you will come out of that movie feeling uncomfortable because you've kind of felt how they might feel from both sides of the coin.
I'll admit, the 50s one made me uncomfortable at times.
Yeah.
The 80s one, never, because it felt a little more fun and leaning into the camp a little bit, and there'd be nods to the original, and I love the little Easter eggs that Hooper was putting into the film. Like, when they were watching that science fiction movie, I recognized it right away. Did you?
No, I did not know.
It was Life Force.
Oh, nice.
This is another Hooper movie. But there was also the nod to the original film when they were in the basement. Did you see the head in the jar?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that was really cool. It's still unknown whether that was made for the film or if they actually found an original prop to throw down there, but you would think that more cheesy-looking 50s one would have been used in some sort of stage production with the kids at the school or something.
Yeah.
And it just made sense it's such a weird little thing that is down in this basement, but it was cool to see it.
It is very cool to see it. There's clearly a love for the original.
Yeah.
When you watch
it definitely shows.
It definitely shows. And you can tell there's a budget behind this remake, especially with the practical effects for the aliens. Because that's, I think, the best part of the film is how he sort of took the original concept of the aliens and made them something really interesting and unique.
Yeah, and he certainly, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, he leans into the child perspective.
Yes.
Keeping low camera angles and integrating things that don't make sense at the time and seem kind of ridiculous, like, why are the aliens taking his coins?
Yes.
His pennies? Well, it's because nickels power their guns.
Yeah.
That are also remote controls that open up openings and things. That was in both movies.
Yes.
It was a little ridiculous.
But again, like I said, and that's the biggest thing, I think this is what we've kind of hammered this point home, but we'll do it one more time, is if you look at this movie as a movie for 13 and under, it's actually quite good. It's a well-told story. It gives you everything that you would want from one of those movies.
Yeah. Now, like that opening scene where I was like really uncomfortable with the abusiveness of his parents, where they're having breakfast here, kind of trying to pretend to be attentive parents. They're bad at it.
Yes.
That's what I liked about Hooper's version. It does come off more comedic and less unsettling.
Yes.
But, burning the bacon into charcoal and still eating it and eating raw hamburger. And
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, that's a little weird and unsettling too.
Yeah, in its own way, yeah. That felt very Coneheads.
Yeah, well, hey, when you had one doing it. So.
Yes.
I mean, you had the teacher eating a frog.
Yes.
Like, you'd think a possessed human still would not do these weird things, but they're so possessed that it's like, well, these are the things we think they're doing. Well, why else would they have a frog?
Yeah.
Oh, they're dissecting them at school. They're not eating them. Yeah. Oh, we didn't know that. Just these weird little things.
See, and if you're making an adult version of the, like sort of amping this up for adult, you could have had something really interesting happen, like when she eats the frog and the effects of the formaldehyde, right, on the human body. Right? I mean, that could have gone into a very dark, horror-ish direction if they'd wanted to.
Yeah.
I mean, there may be a missed opportunity there. It's too bad there isn't like an R edit for this one.
Yeah, well... Yeah, I mean, they could have amped it up and been a lot scarier. I'm kind of glad they kept it. I mean, there's not enough of these kind of things for kids.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, it wasn't for us, but the way that movie's marketed as well, it doesn't look like it's for kids either.
Exactly, and that goes back to that point as to why I think it bombed, is because it was marketed to the wrong audience.
Yeah.
If they had marketed it the way they did Gremlins, where it's meant for younger teens and preteens, I think it probably would have at least made its money back.
Yeah, or given it another week in theaters. I don't know. I mean, it's unfathomable to me that something that was only $12 million didn't make its money back. But
yeah, 1986 audiences were fickle, though.
Yeah.
I mean, the audiences are fickle to begin with.
And I mean, it's more surprising it's as good. It looks as good as it does for a Cannon movie.
Yeah, yeah, because it does look good, but
yeah, I mean, it looks way more than $12 million.
Yeah, but again, Hooper is known for stretching a budget, right?
Yeah, I'll give him credit. There's nothing wrong with the look of the film, the shots. Like, it's well made.
It is well made. There's no question.
Yeah, there's some really wonky performances, especially the inconsistencies with Louise Fletcher and how everybody else was playing the aliens. Yeah. It might have helped if we'd seen what she was like before the aliens landed, but we're never going to know that.
We're never going to know that. And that reminded me of something that I really had to talk about that just made me nuts, and I do not know why he decided to do it this way. Is there's that in the school there's the opening that gets them into the tunnels of the ship, right? It's less than 6 feet deep, right? I mean, when they get into the pit, their heads are almost up to the edge of the pit, and they still lowered ropes to climb down.
And you think it would have gone down deep because like that whole basement floor falls out.
Yeah, and
so it didn't fall far.
Yeah, and it just, you know what, you want to talk about moments that yank you out of a film? That was one of them, right? Because they set it all up. They're dropping the ropes and all that stuff. You're like, okay, they're going down deep, and then
shunk.
And then they go down and they go down halfway down the rope and their feet are on the ground.
It's not that deep, guys.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, I mean, retrospectively, it's probably so they could get back out.
Yeah.
Right? But why didn't they just jump down instead of climbing down the ropes?
Yeah. I mean, they needed. Yeah, you're right. They needed it to get back out. But.
Yeah. It really was jarring.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, lower the rope so you can get back out, or put a ladder in so you can get back out.
Yeah.
But jump down, please. You're the fucking military. You can drop farther than that. No problem, right?
Well, again, it's from a 12-year-old's mind. That's a large jump for him.
And that's a good point, right? I said, but again, that's stretching it, though.
Yeah, but I keep defending the movie because I'm like, oh, it's supposed to be from a kid's perspective. It's supposed to be from a kid's perspective. So I keep thinking that way, and I didn't when I was watching the film, and it's certainly not clear. There's lots of hints towards it.
Yeah, but not till much later in the movie, though.
No.
Right?
And it's certainly, if you're not liking the movie at that point, and then he wakes up and you've grown, it's already too late.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really is it, right?
I mean, but there's no other way to sell that, unfortunately.
But, you know...
without giving the gag away.
Oh, and that's the thing, is if it's... And this is a good example where they could have done something different to sort of emphasize that without giving it away. Is a 12-year-old is going to see these military guys as action heroes. They're going to be fucking G.I. Joe.
Yeah.
Right? So they would have been leaping off that and dropping in.
Oh,
right?
and then doing action poses in their landing.
Yeah, exactly.
It would have been fucking Iron Man dropping down.
That's exactly it. And that's the way, if you had done it, it would have...
Fish punch landing.
Yeah. Like, just really go over the top with it. If you're going to go over the top, go over the top, right?
Yeah.
Give them that sort of storming the beaches of Normandy kind of roar, right? And instead of, let's drop down a rope and climb down, even though it's only 6 feet deep, right? Leap off with your guns drawn and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I think that would have really, like when you, as you were watching it, would have given you the sort of that sense of drama. Mm-hmm. And then as you sort of as you're realizing that this is being told from his perspective, it would have gone, okay, well that makes sense, because that's how a 12-year-old would see the army. You know,
and I'm kind of disappointed that the kid's mind, since that is the perspective here, decided the best course of action was to blow the aliens up. Really, because it was the kid. I mean, in the movie, it's the military making the decision, but at the end of the day, this is the kid's dream. So his first reaction was to, like, kill the fuckers.
But at the same time, it wasn't his first reaction. Right?
I guess not.
Right? Because they had invaded them. They are a threat to him.
Yeah, his story starts out with in the negative to begin with.
Yes.
So.
Right.
I mean, it was a bad dream on, I don't know, creamsicles and Hostess cakes and who knows what inspired that dream. I'm like, what did you have for dinner?
Yeah. But I mean, he's under threat. The first thing that happens is they take his father away from him.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's I mean, what bigger fear is the kid losing his parents?
Exactly. So yeah, I think this is this kid's nightmare, right?
Do you think this is a Groundhog Day scenario? Because the end of the movie, when the dream is revealed as a dream and his parents are okay, and you were there and that was happening, and my nickels are okay. Yeah. Then he looks out the window and the ship is landing again, and in Toby Hooper's version, he actually goes back running to the parents, and then he opens the door and screams. Yes. In his parents' room. We don't know what's there. So I'm wondering, is this a Groundhog Day scenario where he's just hasn't woken up yet? Or is this a do-over and you get to do this for real now?
Or was it a premonition?
Yeah.
Right? Like the dream was like sort of, he had sensed them somehow coming and had the dream. And I think that was my beef with the ending. I think if they'd have woken up from the dream with the ship's landing in both movies,
it was a bit of a Twilight Zone ending.
Yeah, and I think that was probably my biggest issue with it. It was all a dream.
I appreciated it more in the 50s one because it just felt like the era.
Yes.
And then Toby does it again with the scream, and I'm like, oh, poor kid.
Yeah, and it didn't play as well in the 80s version.
It didn't.
Because the wrong, you're right, era, it just didn't feel right. I think waking up from the dream would have given it a little more validity. Mm-hmm. Than having that ship come back down, and I guess I understand why he did it, because he wanted to be true to the original film in that sense. But I think that he could have gotten away without including that.
Mm-hmm. But some audiences didn't buy that. That's why they changed the original to on the British version, so the dream sequence was gone entirely.
Yeah. Well, and I think that
technically, I guess the entire movie was a dream sequence. The waking from the dream sequence.
Yes. Yeah, that wake up moment. I can see why they pulled it, just because it would have given, because it changes it from sort of potentially a kids movie to and a fantasy to sort of more of a straight up science fiction film, and that's clearly what they felt British audiences wanted. Yeah,
I mean, it would probably open a lot later in a British film, right? So they had the time to go and do those reshoots, and by that point, there'd probably been quite a few more straight up science fiction movies that had coming out by that point, so that might have been what had been the motivator for it.
Possibly, yeah. Because I mean, it's not like nowadays, and even still, you still get staggered release dates, right? You'll have something in the UK that before it even drops here. It's very rare that you see like a worldwide release on.
Yeah, I mean,
day.
British movies when they open in the rest of North America are almost 6 months later. Sometimes,
yeah, sometimes a year or more.
Yeah. And it's funny because they're opening up here, and if you just go on Amazon, you can order the damn thing from a foreign distributor if you have a proper player. So
well, I mean, even in North America, a lot of Canadian music films get theatrical releases here after they've been released on DVD or VOD in the US. Mm-hmm. Right, which is weird. Mind-boggling that you're sharing a border and you're still. It's like, well, why would I pay $13 to go to the theater when I can spend $5 to order it on Amazon Prime? Because you guys messed up and made it available in Canada on VOD before your theatrical release.
Annihilation was almost like that as well. They would only open in a handful of countries, including ours, but theatrically. But it was almost on VOD the same week everywhere.
Yeah, and that's a bad business model.
I think so too.
Right?
I think that killed the box office on that film.
I'm sure it did.
Yeah.
Right? I'm sure it did. I get that maybe you don't have support for a theatrical release in some countries, but make sure that if you're doing VOD that it's region locked.
Yeah. It seems the logical thing to do, but
it's not hard.
Yeah, I don't know the economics on those type of releases, but it seems like a no-brainer to me.
Yeah.
But whatever. I mean, they want to kill their movie.
Yeah, exactly. But we're not talking about that, but it was an interesting aside.
It is an interesting aside. You got any last thoughts about Invaders from Mars, I guess? It's hard to do that because we're Invasion of the Remake and Invaders from Mars.
Yes, and then we also mentioned Invasion of the Body Snatchers on top of it all.
Yeah, there's a reason I've been avoiding Invasion of the Body Snatchers
because there's 4 of them.
There's a lot of them. We'll do that at some point. It may be a 2-parter.
Yeah. Well, last time we did more than 2. We did. I can't remember which one it was, but we did one.
Occasionally we'll sneak something in, and especially thankfully we'll be able to skip TV stuff, TV remakes, and sometimes we'll make a little mention of it, like when we did Piranha. Yeah, we did talk a little bit about the TV one, but I did not make that required viewing for everybody.
No, I think there's a few of them where we have a lot where there have been a lot of remakes of Stars Born is a good example.
Yeah,
the Body Snatchers.
And I don't think anybody wants us to do 3 episodes on A Star Is Born. So,
no.
And I don't want to watch 5 of them.
No. So we'll figure that one out.
So, in those options, and you know what? Maybe we've had some success on our lead up to 200 with you doing some polls, and we're going to probably have a couple more once you get back from vacation as we're leading up to 200. But maybe we'll do that where, in the case of where there's multiple remakes, and we don't feel the need to watch 5 of these
or
films,
have the desire.
we'll make a poll of listing which ones to compare. Obviously, with The Stars Born, we'd probably want to do the most recent one. But which other one do we compare it to? Yeah. Is it the Streisand one? Because that's a remake.
Yes, it's a remake, but it's also one of the the iconic one, right?
Yeah.
So is that the one that we should be using as our bench line?
Yeah, so maybe when we decide to do that, we will get our audience, to chime in, our fellow invaders, because we can't do this invasion without you. And sometimes it gets difficult, and when we have this many things, okay, an Invasion of the Body Snatchers might be worth doing as a 2-parter, but Stars Born probably not for our audience, considering you guys seem to like the genre fare a little bit more.
Exactly. So it was something to think about. If you like what we're thinking about, let us know.
Yeah, just drop us a line on our social media, and again, that is at Invasion Remake on Twitter, and Sam's the one shepherding that ship over there.
Most of the time.
He's the head honcho captain over there, so he'll reply to you over there. And I'm watching Facebook and the YouTube feeds, but we are Invasion of the Remake over on Facebook and Instagram, and Invasion of the Remake at gmail.com if you want to email us, and we both see that as well. Yeah. So email us your comments about these things that have multiple remakes, and of course other suggestions, corrections, comments, things we missed. I mean, we can't cover it all sometimes in an episode, so start a conversation, and we'd like to hear more of your thoughts about any of these episodes. We certainly like to see it, and make sure you leave us a quick review and a 5-star rating over on Apple Podcasts and all the other favorite podcast platforms.
Please do, yeah. You don't just have to leave reviews on iTunes if you're not an iTunes user. All of the other podcast catchers allow you to comment and review.
And have you read anything about this? Is iTunes doing away with podcasts?
No, Apple Podcasts was their experiment for breaking them all into separate apps instead of having the iTunes. Right?
Yeah, I've been hearing weird things that Apple's getting rid of iTunes as a whole for something new.
They are, yes.
Oh, okay.
Right, so what they're doing is they're breaking it up into Apple Music, Apple Apps, Apple Podcasts. So Apple Podcasts was
how confusing.
Well, it allows people to select what they want, so they can just use part of the application that they use on a day-to-day basis.
I suppose. I kind of like these all-in-one things, but I don't know. You get used to something, and then everybody has to change it.
Well, I'll be honest.
That's my old man rant.
Yeah. I like it just because when I go in there, I'm usually doing multiple things. I'm updating my music, and I'm updating my books, right?
I'm dropping things into apps.
Yeah.
You know, there are some certain apps I need iTunes to drop things into for like books and things like that.
Exactly, right?
So
and
like, I hope those features are still working.
Well, they are right now because I just put some books on my tablet just last week. So
good.
So they are still working, and I mean, I think you'll be able to keep the last version of iTunes available to you to do those kind of things. I think.
I hope so.
I hope so because that makes it does make things.
Because that'll be an app killer.
Yeah, or you're gonna have to get apps to upload stuff to other apps.
Yeah, okay. Now that we've started a complete iProduct panic.
Yeah. Yes.
Sorry about that. Make sure you tell your friends about where to find us, especially on alternate Apple products. We are on, of course, Apple Podcasts, but we're also on Stitcher and Google Play Music, Player FM, TuneIn Radio, Radio Public, the radio.com app. We so far you can't find us on the web version of it, but we are on the app version, which is great. We're on lots of mobile stuff, and we got a full list of that on our link tree, which you can find on our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages if you want to see a lot of other alternatives. But just search us out on your favorite podcast provider. We're even on frickin' YouTube. See, we try to make it as easy as possible. The full library is over on the podcatchers. We don't have the full library on YouTube, but a good hunk of them are there, and we'll always keep the newest ones up for several weeks to give you a chance to view them. So if there are any problems that I can't solve with YouTube, because they're certainly finicky about what goes up, then I'll yank them. There's still lots of places you can look at and see those episodes or listen to those episodes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's it for Invasion of... Oh, God. See, now I'm doing it. That is it for Invaders from Mars, because I'm sick of these fucking Martians coming in and taking over our necks.
Yes.
And putting heads in jars. And I did like that the aliens felt really alien. They weren't typical Martians. Like, okay, yeah, the ground soldiers in the 50s one were just dudes in green suits, but the actual Martian was this thing in the jar.
Yes.
Which I'm like, okay, that's different and pretty bold even for 50s science fiction. And then Tobys' version was this more gross extension of that, where it was this head on this neck. I'm almost thinking that the alien was the ship. It was this worm thing with a head.
Yeah, well, yeah, because they looked almost brain-like, right?
Yeah.
So, with little itty-bitty arms.
Yeah, and then you got the potato head soldier mutant things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, no, he got really creative with it and didn't give us the standard little green man.
Yeah. Yeah, I always like a creative alien, and boy, were they creative in Tobe Hooper's version. If nothing else, it's kind of worth just checking those aliens out, because the effects on that were awesome.
Yeah, I'm certainly not saying don't watch these, but be prepared for something that's not aimed at adults.
Yeah. If you go in thinking watching these with child eyes and maybe watching with your kids, I think you might get more enjoyment out of it just by watching your kid watching the movie.
Yeah.
You know, sounds a little creepy, but it's a family thing, and I think that would go over really well as a family unit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't want to go super young. I think 10 and up is probably appropriate.
Yeah. I mean, keep it around the age of the kid that's in the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, I think, who the target audience was for.
Yeah.
And what kid doesn't like that? They read comics, and they're putting themselves in that position in their heads of like, oh, I want to be Spider-Man and whatever, and that is this movie.
It really is,
Yeah.
Because our kid is the hero. In the end, the kid really is the hero.
Exactly. I think at least young boys are really going to like this movie.
Yes, and I just thought of something else that I had to talk about. Sorry, I know we're done, but I have to mention it because it wasn't until the very end that I remembered this part. The end scene of the original with the fucking running and the fucking running and the fucking running, and then the flashback of the entire movie all the way through the run. I mean, you didn't need to watch the movie; you need to watch the last 30 seconds because it showed you the whole movie.
It's true. It's true. That was like, oh, come on, guys.
Yeah, like, you're just trying to stretch your runtime, aren't you?
Yeah,
right?
I was like, were you paying attention? Well, yeah, I was here.
Yes, I watched the movie.
Yeah, I the first time they did it, I'm like, uh-oh. And the second time they did it, I'm like, oh, no. And then they kept doing it. I'm like, but guys, I was there.
Yeah, because
I was right here.
Yeah, because the bomb was supposed to go off in like 45 seconds, and he ran for about 2 minutes.
While they redid the movie.
While they showed you all the key scenes. Every single key scene from the movie was in the flashbacks.
Yeah.
Right. So if you don't
And
want
I
to watch the
don't
movie,
know what the dramatic beat of that was.
that's the thing. It served no purpose.
No, but yeah, if you want to just get the Reader's Digest version with the tension already happening, yeah, just watch that last little bit.
Yeah, they just for when he starts running away from the ship to when he wakes up, and you've got the whole movie.
And I think maybe that was to establish that
it was a dream.
It was a dream.
Yeah. But it was clumsy, and it annoyed me.
I think the whole movie annoyed you. Both movies annoyed you.
No, I didn't. No, I wouldn't say.
You came in hot, man. You came in hot.
I hated you while I was watching them. I did, but I've had some time to stew on them, and
you started this episode hot.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. I fucking hated these movies.
Thank you.
But I appreciate some of the merits now that we've talked about it. How about that?
Okay. That's why we put you on the couch for the psychoanalysis.
Yeah, I did preface by saying there were parts that I did like, but for the most part, I found them arduous to watch, and I'm never watching them again.
Yeah, I'm probably with you there. All right, well, that was Invaders from Mars. I've been Jason.
I am always Sam.
And we are out of here.
What is it?
No, leave me alone!
David, it's all right.
It's okay. You're awake now, honey. Hey, it's okay.
Dad.
David.
They started chasing me all over the place, and then they got you and Dad.
Oh, they did?
Oh, just calm down, honey. Calm down. Now, who chased you?
Dad, let me see the back of your neck.
Must have been a hell of a dream.
Please let me see.
Okay?
That's okay.
Okay, wait a minute. What about me?
You're fine, Mom.
Oh, darling.
You see, this spaceship landed right in the back of the hill. And you started chasing me down the hill. And then everything exploded into a great big white light.
Boy, that is really weird, David.
Actually, I like the stuff about the Martians coming to steal the copper.
But it seems so real.
Copper for energy, huh?
Well, David, you got nothing to worry about. Your penny collection is still here.
You know what it seems to me? It seems to me like your dream was full of all sorts of things that happened to you today. Like your penny collection. Even Mad Dog Wilson coming to your school.
But I was so scared.
There is nothing to be afraid of, David Gardner. Tomorrow we will take a picnic up at the hill.
Feel better now, VK, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. I think you better get some sleep. You'll be pretty tired at school tomorrow. Good night, son.
Good night, Dad.
Good night, sweetheart.
Mom?
You want me to leave this open a little bit?
No, it's okay.